Happy Sunday, folks. Welcome to our attempt to communicate something helpful. Playing with this format has been fun. It's been a fun learning experience. I'm realizing that technology is moving a lot faster than I'm moving these days, and so I'm trying to keep up and learn how to use these virtual slash digital formats to deliver something that approximates what we do in person. I'm super amateur at talking to a camera. Digital trying to communicate, trying to compress everything that we do and distill it and deliver that virtually is difficult. I feel like I'm starting to have some sense of breakthrough on our Instagram Daily Dharma. So I would, invite you. We do a daily Dharma post, a short clip of about 10 to 15 minutes worth of content every day on Instagram, on our Evercenter Instagram, and on my personal Instagram. So, I invite you to check that out. And I also would ask you to please be patient with me while I work through this new learning curve of trying to deliver these lectures and this information digitally. All right, well, here we go. So I would like us to, try to put on the magic hat here. And I was thinking about, I was thinking about human growth hormone because I've been investigating various types of therapies like stem cell therapy for old athletics injuries that have been having some type of impact on my mobility. It's not crazy. I'm in pretty good shape, but I would like to return to the great shape that I was in my younger years. And so I was reminded of human growth hormone again, and it's got me thinking about what Dharma actually is. And so from time to time, I will refer to this type of education as human imagination growth hormone. In other words, the whole point of all of this is to help us open our eyes more and more and more to the magic of what's really going on. Before I get into the presentation, I also want to just say that it is super helpful for me. It's super helpful for me when y'all ask questions or when you submit some type of commentary or questions, or want to propose something for debate in the chat, because some of the ideas that we're going to be going over in this lecture series, I haven't really taught or reflected on in some years. I mean, the Dharma Compass, what we're doing today, I really haven't publicly talked about in any type of formal way for probably 2 years. So I will do my best to make it hit and have it be somewhat entertaining. But I just want to say that it is helpful to me when you participate, because it helps to maybe, it sparks my imagination. It reminds me of something that I had forgotten to say, or something provocative or something magical about the topic. So I just want to throw that out, that, at any point, I'm peeking down at the chat to see, how what we're doing is being received. So let me just go ahead and share a screen real quick, because we will jump in. All right. Jumping into this guy here, the Dharma Compass. Where did my screen go? Okay, here we go. Sorry, okay. So yeah, troubleshooting. All right, folks, jumping into the Dharma Compass here. Let me just make sure I got navigation on this guy. All right. Okay, jumping into the Dharma Compass. So starting with two crazy ideas, two super provocative ideas from the jump. And sometimes, I will do my best to remember to say this when we start every single new idea. And, when we think of when we think of Buddhism, right? Oftentimes we forget how insanely rebellious it was. Like I say provocation from the jump. Provocation is built into. It's made of. It's part of the fabric of all of this. Um, so provocative ideas can be an indicator that we're in the presence of something that still bears the resemblance or the imprint or the mark of the original impulse, right? And or can help us identify what is a real lineage, or in what I say a living line of education. How do we know that we're interacting with the living line of education and not something that is stagnant or just academics repeating words that have been lost in translation, telephone game, over hundreds of years? How do we know that we're in the presence, or what I'm proposing, a way for us to know that we are in the presence of a living lineage is if we are given a trigger warning that here are some provocative ideas. These are going to challenge in the most fundamental way all of the different conceptions that we're currently holding on to, how we view ourselves in the world, right? So here we go. So Dharma Compass, 2 provocative ideas. The first is that everything that we can possibly experience, everything that we can do, everywhere that we can go, internally and externally, is represented on this compass. So that's something I call these philosophical gauntlets. I encourage students and anyone in the teacher training to start right there and grapple with, that. Here's provocation number 1. Is it possible that everything that we can do or experience is actually represented on this map? That's the first. And the second is that there's no self, there's no box or rung or space called self on this. In other words, what this is proposing is that there doesn't actually exist a self for any of us apart from, independent of, or in a vacuum, apart from or independent of any of these spaces. There is no self that exists apart from any of these spaces. So leaving that there for us to consider. And so what's also interesting is what's also accounted for in the view, in the row view and distorted view, that also accounts for what we call our basic insanity. I have no idea who I am, really. I have no idea, where I've come from. Where was I before I came to this body? Did my consciousness, emerge out of my biology? Does a soul go, travel to heaven? Does my mind continue? Do we become nothing? All of the things that we're uncertain about are also accounted for. So I'm going to just pause and give us some timing here, some space to take a breath. Provocation from jump. This diagram is proposing that this diagram is basically saying, like, what if it's true that this represents the human experience in its, as diverse as it can get, right? What we're also looking at is a diagram of motion, right? All of the arrows they're implying that, we don't stay in one place, that we are in motion, right? And also that there are, loops to things. And those loops are initiated, or those loops have causes, and the continuity of the loops have causes. In other words, habits. What we're looking at is a diagram of habits. Okay. Let's get into a little bit of commentary here. So, it's called a compass. Now, why? What is the purpose of a compass? What is it? What is its function, right? The compass is to help us stay on target, right? Let's say we want to go somewhere. Well, the compass helps orient us to that aim. In other words, what's implied is there is a point to spiritual practice. There is, as is referenced on this chart, there is a transcendent, there is some type of, whoa, the biggest deal possible point or goal of practice, and that is to experience something, extremely, 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 the most profound thing possible, right? And so, is it possible that this is the guiding system that can take us closer and closer and closer to the most profound experience possible, right? This is, again, for the students, for the teachers and teacher training. These are the types of questions that represent the resistance that transforms us into superheroes. So that's why we're starting with the Dharma Compass. That's why we're starting with all this. Okay. So is it possible that what's communicated on this map is actually the way to the most profound experience possible? All right. Now, why the hell would anyone need a compass? Again, obviously, because there's somewhere we want to go, or if you flip that on its head, there's somewhere we don't want to go, right? Like we don't wake up, really, really, really longing for the worst experience possible, or any type of confusion at all. We do not want to experience any confusion whatsoever in how we should engage our loved ones, our colleagues, our future. How should I engage today so that I can experience the future that I want? We don't want to experience any confusion about that process at all, right? And so that can be the benefit of having a compass, is that it can keep us aligned to the most appropriate way to think and act, okay? So just one more comment here. So again, we're moving through our lives, and without some type of mechanism that can keep us on target, it's very easy to fall out of to fall off course, right? And again, we don't want that, right? So let me also, I'm trying to work on pacing. I'm trying to work on doing this in a way where it's effective. I also want to try to be a little bit repetitive. I want to invite students and the teacher trainees to consider this like a spiritual boxing match, spiritual sparring. Okay. So now we're going to dig into the details of this a little bit more in terms of the how-to. So great, I've got this compass, but how do I actually work with this? So let's just start from the very top. I'm going to transition to another screen so I can actually read what the hell's going on. All right, we're going to start at the very top. The Dharma Compass. This is a reality, mind, body, energy flow chart of an individual moment by moment. Now that sounds crazy. Again, students and teacher trainees, those are words that represent spiritual sparring, right? Is it possible that that's what is happening on this map, that everything that happens for an individual moment by moment is represented on this chart? All right, well, let's look at the chart and then we can see whether or not we agree with that. So at the very top is something called sovereign revelation. And so the very beginning of Buddhism starts with sovereign revelation. And again, that's a gauntlet for us to even think about whether or not it's possible, for a human being to know, definitively. Do we think that it is possible for a human being to know definitively what all of this means? Sovereign revelation. What is a sovereign revelation as we're defining it? It is an experience in which everything pertaining to everything is revealed all at once and sealed in the mind and the body. All right. I'm going to go to the next row, view. And let me just check my notes. Again, please bear with me while I improve my own skill at doing this. All right. So we're basically we're in how to use the compass. So we've got some crazy idea at the start in how the hell do we work with that? I don't know. I'm gonna touch it and we're gonna leave it there and move on into the next layer of the compass cake called view. And what it's proposing, there's only two ways to see ourselves in the world. Simple as that. We either are seeing, experiencing, conceiving of, perceiving and conceiving of, interpreting ourselves and our environment clearly or not. Okay? There are two views that we can hold. We are either clear about who we are, what we are, how we're related to other phenomena. We're either clear about how we're interpreting, we have a clear interpretation of our environment, or we don't. Now, one other thing to say about view is that often when we think of myself, when we think of ourselves, when we want to try to conceptually represent what we mean to say when we say myself, that is what is meant by view. Okay, from a Dharma point of view, that is what is meant by view, is who we think we are, and whether or not it is clear, or how they would say correct view, or not clear. Okay. Now, also, what's drawn explicitly but not stated explicitly is that the view, from view, or view initiates every other thing in our lives, or every single thing that we're doing is colored by, influenced by our view. In other words, the view is the cause of our confusion or our clarity. View is the cause of confusion or clarity. Okay. So we've got distorted view is exactly what it is that we are not appropriately interpreting environment. We are not clearly seeing what's going on. We do not clearly know who we are. We do not clearly understand how we are related to our environment. That is distorted view. Clear view, conversely, is clear view is the converse, the opposite of all of those. It is appropriate interpretation, understanding of ourselves, clearly seeing and experiencing how we're related, and so on. So that is what would indicate a sovereign being, and or what a sovereign being discovers is clear view. Okay. And we're going to go down into the next layer of the compass cake called mentation. Mentation just means activities of mind. So another thing that this is doing, in addition to it being a map for our, if we were to try to externally locate ourselves, what it's also doing is informing us of our composition as beings, right? You could think of view as sense of self, as, sense of subjectivity, right? And that sense of subjectivity, or some people call your sense of awareness, or your consciousness, or, your I, whatever, however you want to conceive of that, that is view, right? And it's, and then it is interpreting its experience. It is experiencing, right? Phenomena, mostly in the form of mind, mentation, actions of mind. I can notice that my mind is doing things, as well as I can notice that my body is doing things, right? So in addition to this being an external, triangulation device, like where am I right now? it also starts to inform us of our composition as beings, right? So mentation, meaning what our mind is doing, right? And so this is proposing that there's only three things that our minds can do. Again, and what our minds are doing, the actions of our minds were caused by the view that we're holding about ourselves and our world. Okay, and so then obviously the byproduct of distorted view is distorted mentation, thought patterns that are out of alignment with what's actually going on. Okay, that's distorted mentation. Now this center concept is really is like the most essential part of this map. So something called aspirational mentation. Now, again, things that we're doing with our mind, that's basically what that means is study and reflection, or study and contemplation. That's basically what that means. We are deliberately, we are very deliberately and thoughtfully using our mind in a certain way, directing or operating, orchestrating the actions of our mind in a certain way, specifically in study and reflection. Okay, that's another thing that we can do with our mind. And then the third type of mental activity is what is the natural byproduct of clear view. Okay, so now let me just point one thing out here. There's a natural byproduct of distorted view called distorted mentation, and then there's a byproduct of clear view called sovereign mentation. But aspirational mentation is not caused by view. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. Again, thank you for being patient with me. I'm going to take just a pause for myself and look at my notes here. Okay, so we're looking at the different types of places we can find ourselves, with the different places we're located, as well as our composition, right? And so let's go to the last layer of the cake here: performance. In other words, the actions of our bodies, our actions in the world. And again, there's four types of actions here. Distorted mentation, which is caused by distorted view, is the cause that produces two different byproducts. One of them is called nihilistic performance. We all know what that means. Nothing means anything. Who cares? That's kind of like as good as nihilism gets. Like, who cares? YOLO. Who cares? YOLO. That's as good as nihilism gets, and then it goes all the way down into the depths of the worst types of darkness that we have ever experienced can think about, right? So that comes out of distorted mentation, distorted thought patterns that are rooted in distorted view, unclear view about what's going on. The other type of performance that distorted mentation produces is what's called unreliable performance. And unreliable performance, again, has a lot of weight when we're first interacting with that, because in reality, that's where we find ourselves most probably when we're ready to take our own maturity, like the maturation of our strength of character, our spiritual growth. When we're ready to take that seriously, we're probably located in unreliable performance. So sometimes, out of unreliable performance, sometimes we're like, who cares? And sometimes we engage in inspired performance, which is the next thing we're going to do. And sometimes maybe we'll pray, or we're like hope, or we're like do some study, but it's not consistent, right? The habit isn't established. So that's why unreliable, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Today I'm making progress. Man, I fell out, stop going to the gym, whatever, right? So that's the second type of performance we can engage in. That's also unreliable performance is also produced by not being clear about what the hell is going on. Okay. Inspired performance is a third type of behavior patterns that we express in the world. And notice that inspired performance is not related to aspirational mentation or sovereign mentation. What it is related to is sovereign performance. So let me just touch that really quickly, and then we can understand why inspired performance is related to that. So you can think about, there are, if you want to go all the way to the magic land, there have been and are humans that wake up to the magic and that then hit the world with sovereign performance. And as they're in the world doing that, they meet other friends that become inspired by their way of life, and then that produces some outcome. So inspired performance literally means that it was inspired by something more encompassing or dynamic or influential or good or something. I was moved to act a certain way because I collided with someone else in the world, not because of how I was thinking within myself. I was inspired to modify my behavior because I collided with someone else in the world, someone else's body in the world. And it was so eye-opening that I was, inspired to act in such a way. Okay, so yes, so right. So sovereign performance is the extension of sovereign mentation. Again, if we're looking at this causally. Now, let me just make one other comment. Also, about these two zones, because these are the basically it's like the North Pole and the South Pole. Like these are the orienting factors, basically, right? So in other words, distorted view is the cause of distorted mentation, which is the cause of the zone of dissipation. Actions that when performed represent energy waste or resource waste or zero return on investment. I'm going to say that again. Distorted view is the cause of a certain type of thought pattern, which is then the cause of energy wasted, zero return on investment. And now, why am I saying that these are the North and South Pole? Because, again, we don't want that. We don't want to waste our time. We do not want to waste our money. We do not want to make bad bets. We do not want to waste our energy, time, resources. We don't want to waste our life. All right. Well, now, conversely, what we do want is the opposite. We want 100% return on investment. We want to reside, in other words, in the zone of sustainability, or in other words, we want to figure out how to initiate that constructive habit loop, that constructive feedback loop, right? And if we just follow the arrows, the way to do that is either, press pause on our lives, whether we're being unreliable or inspired, press pause and start to engage in study and reflection, study and familiarization with the principles we're studying, study and contemplation. That is what initiates the feedback loop that represents, living in the zone of sustainability. In other words, experiencing the life that we want. Right. So again, just from the top, right? Just again, from the top, when we look at this, it's very clear to identify what we want and what we don't want. And I would encourage practitioners to, to spend time grappling with that possibility. Is this thing, does it make sense? The connections, the relationships, the cause and effect chain, and is it actually conveying what I want and what I don't want? Because if it is, I would really encourage students to equip yourself, arm yourself with this, like, upload it or download it or however you want to think of it, digest it and assimilate it. Because again, this is something that can be extremely, extremely beneficial for, helping us endure, helping us develop resilience. So I want to say that. I want to also say that it can, as we reflect on it, it can really clearly identify the space the location that we're aiming for, and like how we get there. All right. I also want to say, so what's really powerful about something like this is that it is not, it's not only theoretical, right? Like this can actually become a practice. And when we think about practice, I also think it's important for us to really come to terms with there's a fact of the marks and signs of right and wrong practice. The marks and signs of right and wrong practice. In other words, the indicators, like, how do you know that you're doing the practice the right way? In other words, and let's say, I use the gym metaphor a lot. So, imagine that you're going to work out. Like there is something that can happen that can inform you that you're definitely doing it wrong, called getting injured. Right? And similarly, there's something that can inform us that we're doing it right. Right? And when I mean doing it right, when I mean aspirational mentation, when we pause and engage aspirational mentation, there is also an indicator that can inform us that we are doing that right. In other words, clear view, your mind and your body will let you know when you are experiencing clear view. Just like your mind and your body will let you know when you are working out incorrectly, your mind and your body will let you know when you've injured yourself. Right? Your mind and your body will let you know when you are inhabiting clear view. And so I think let me go back to the website really quickly again. Thank you. I'm trying to figure this out. I know that it's information heavy. It's not really my favorite thing to do, to just go information. But I do want to, because we're kind of at a good space, I want to talk about what that indicator is. Okay. And it's called here bodhicitta. This is a Sanskrit word, bodhicitta. And so let's just talk about that for a moment, because that is the experience. Bodhicitta is what our minds and body will be experiencing, that will inform us that we are inhabiting clear view. Okay, so I'm just going to read now again. The screen that I'm sharing is our website, evercenter.org, and I've navigated to the Dharma database, and I just did a search in the database for Dharma Compass, and so I'm on that page. And I'm sure that we'll put the link also in the description of this video. But so I'm literally just reading from our website right now. Bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word that is traditionally translated as mind of enlightenment. Y'all already know I got beef with translators. In contemporary terms, bodhicitta is a force that orients us toward complete clarity about our nature, origin, and purpose. Okay, so there's something. There's something that it's dynamic. It's going to move us. It's going to inspire us to study and practice more. Like a muscle, bodhicitta can be strengthened over time to be a continuous default state of being. Like love, this is really the important point about bodhicitta, right? Like love, we call love an emotion. And how do we know that we're in love? Because our minds and bodies are screaming that, right? They're like love, 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 right? Our minds and our bodies let us know that we're experiencing something. And you know, we don't necessarily say love for everybody, but there's some, as we become more and more intimate, when we admire someone and then through that admiration get closer and closer and more intimate, we slowly start to become invested in their well-being, right? And so we want to support them, we want to give them our time, we want to participate in their lives, and that closeness and that care and the well-wishing and all of those different things that we say love, right? And we know that it emerges spontaneously. It's like you can't prefabricate or like premeditate love. Like it is something that emerges organically out of us feeling intimate with someone in a positive way and becoming invested in their well-being. Okay. So like love, bodhicitta emerges spontaneously as a result of feeling deeply connected to and identified with others. This feeling wish is primarily triggered through observing our loved ones endure unnecessary pain and suffering. Specifically, where bodhicitta differs from love is that it includes, so it's like love in that we start to adopt the way that the beloved feels. And so we share in the joy of the beloved and we share in the pain of the beloved, right? And so in addition to that sense of shared experience, where bodhicitta differs from love is that it includes a heartfelt commitment to become capable of bringing maximum benefit to others. And then the tradition kind of really dials that, like funnels it into, the idea that I want to become an enlightened being so that I can actually bring help to the beloved, right? And so that's how they're qualifying it, right? And then basically, so this last sentence, as the arising of bodhicitta ripens, it compels us as practitioners to aspire to single-mindedly realize the truth in a direct and visceral way. This is the force, in other words, this is the force that catapults us to sovereign revelation, in other words. And therefore, in other words, if we are not experiencing bodhicitta, we are not headed in the direction that we want to go. Okay, folks, let me check my notes. I'm looking for questions. We're looking at a question. How do we change our view, right? Like, so aspirational mentation is just some broad word, but basically the path, right? What's implied in study and practice is stages of the path. I'm just looking at some other notes that I think are relevant. So, we change view by studying and contemplating the path, period. But also, we think about study and practice. So, your practice is basically, our practice is basically becomes a guardrail, right? Again, you're thinking of, ourselves as a collection of habits. Who I am basically is a collection of habits of a habit of you, one way or the other, habit of thoughts, either, probably distorted, and, habit of behavior patterns in the world, probably unrealistic, unreliable. And so, what is it that's going to change our view is going to be really, addressing those habits. And that's basically what study and practice is. Um, yeah. I'm looking at, okay, so we're looking at, well, where does distorted view, come from? It comes from distorted view. Think about, we can think about views or again, the Dharma Compass as a system of education. And we are inheriting education. We're inheriting distorted view from distorted view. It's being passed down. So another way to think of the zones of dissipation are as universities. So you've got, Dissipation University, and it graduates students with a degree in dissipation, right? And how to waste, money, how to waste time, how to waste one's life. That's, right. And then conversely, you've got Sustainability University, and that is going to be, disseminating information that actually, empowers us to navigate our lives, gracefully. So, yeah, distorted view is something that we were taught. I'm also checking my notes just to make sure that I'm not missing anything as these questions are being queued. Right, you're right. So to kind of tie these first and second questions together, again, think of it really, we can think of practice as investment. And again, are there indicators that your investment portfolio is growing or not? Yes, there are, right? Is the time that we're putting in, is the money that we're putting in growing or not? Right? Okay. Yeah, let me see. Let me go to chat. Yeah, I'm not missing. I feel good about my own notes. Let's look at here. Okay, yeah, this is related to, again, so this is good because it's keeping us on track. So how do I know if I'm doing it right? Again, like more specifically about marks and signs of proper investment, proper practice. So I would say the easiest way to understand this is if we dig into the sovereign, the gold line here. So what's being proposed? The crazy magical idea that's being proposed is that as human beings, we're optimally positioned to realize the magic of life. In other words, there's no better station than human being to experience sovereign revelation. Now, there are, I could go on and on about why that's so, but I'm just kind of proposing that here. And so, as this pertains to how do we know if we're doing it right? We will grow, and if I'm doing it right, I will experience a connection to other people, and that will move me. Right. So you could just, if we're looking at the chart, if I'm doing my aspirational meditation properly, if I'm studying and reflecting and praying for the well-being of everyone that I'm realizing that I depend on, and I'm starting to, when I come out of that aspirational meditation, I'm engaging in inspired performance. I will slowly organically experience some bodhicitta. Now, immediately out of that, in other words, I will start to earn clear view, right? And immediately out of that, I will get a taste of sovereign mentation, right? And so what a sovereign's mind is engaged in designing and engineering sovereign performances, right? So ideas to actually bring as much benefit as is possible to my immediate environment, maybe to the broader community. And then the byproduct of that, obviously, is then the execution of our inner architecture, the execution of our ideas in the form specifically of invigorating the environment, evoking aspirational meditation, meaning inspiring other people to study and practice and contemplate, or colliding with other people, being so full of that um, uh, interest in the well-being of everyone, that we collide with someone and inspire their performance. So I want to say that's how we know. That is the hard line in the sand to know whether or not our practice is working, is if organically we start to feel moved to do more for other people. First, just to experience that as an emotion, I want to do more to help other people be clear about what they're experiencing, or just have a better time. Right now, we might not know exactly what we should do about that, but again, what's implied is that the sovereign knows how to do that. It's a crazy idea. But I want to also say, it's a way for us to clarify our understanding of even of the end of the path period is, again, I've got beef with the translators, and there's a word called liberation, freedom, that we've been told is related to enlightenment, or what we're calling sovereign revelation, liberation, right, or freedom. But the Dharma Compass doesn't have any place called liberation or freedom, right? It's like, again, we go all the way to the back. It's like, this is proposing that everything is there. So I think, and I know that I'm not speaking directly to any of these questions right now, but I think it is important to also work through the understanding of what's being intimated here, that everything pertaining to everything, experience all at once, and having that be sealed in mind and body, like what that means, what happens then, right? Because it's like, that's also a thing we ask, right? And we've got all sorts of ideas about that, but I want to be clear so we understand what it is that we're liberated to, or what we're and from, what we were previously not free to do, and what we are now free to do, right? We are liberated from our distorted view. We are liberated from our erroneous conceptions of ourselves. We are liberated from the habit of inappropriately interpreting our environment. And we are liberated to, or we become free to serve. We become free to use our minds to design and engineer sovereign performance. And we become free to execute sovereign performance in the world. We become free to invigorate the environment. We become free to evoke aspirational mentation and inspired performance. We become free to invigorate, innovate, uplift, support, love, pacify, educate. We become free we are liberated from an erroneous view of our purpose. We are free to experience our purpose and live out our purpose, right? And so, right. And so we might not resonate with the idea that this is the most magical place possible, only because, when we look at the map, it's like, the majority of our life experience has been zone of dissipation. So even when we, let's say, start to use this as a practice, and you recall, what was it like when you were in nihilistic performance? How did that feel? Do you want to go back there? It's much easier to recall experiences. It's much easier to remember being located in zone of dissipation, and it's much more difficult. Like, we don't really reside in sustainability that often. So when when we're told that sovereign revelation is, it doesn't mean that we get to explode, we get to become king of the universe, we disappear, we go to heaven, we're infinitely something or other. That it's like it can not sit well with us when we're invited to consider that, the Christ wanted to be human because the human was the point that represented the most divine place of activity, or something like that. Like the Buddha who was previously, according to the tradition, the most advanced alien that was the head of the most advanced Dharma center in the universe, wanted to take a human incarnation, right? Anyway, so sorry for rambling. Let me check my notes. Let me make sure I'm good. Let me come back to see if there's any other questions. Coming to a question here. Is there a list of actions that we can pick and choose from, well, yes and no, right? Like, yes, there's a list called the stages of the path, and no, we cannot choose which ones we want to do in which order. So the path or movement toward the most profound experience possible is a recipe. It's a recipe, right? It's a causal chain, right? In other words, so there are certain things, just like we're baking a cake. We get no cake if we don't have the ingredients, and B, use those ingredients with the right type of equipment at the right time, right? So, if I don't add the milk and I do everything else, I don't get cake. If I do everything else but don't have the flour, I don't get cake, right? So in other words, what we're going to be introduced to, next week is really the stages of the path, like how this starts to lay out. And again, we'll be invited to consider whether or not that makes sense, like logically. Can we see how one thing produces another thing and was produced from some previous cause, right? Again, I'm just checking my notes in case there was anything lingering. Sorry, folks. Okay, maybe we got time for one more thing and then we will wrap it up. We're looking at what would be the best way to memorize this, or upload or download this, basically, like, what's the best way for me to really learn this? And so well, I would really recommend starting with, take it as, consider this an attack on your view of the world, and grapple with it and contest with it, and see if you can find things that it's missing, or are we going to take a knee and say, like, you know what, whoa, okay, I've examined this and it makes sense. Another thing, another way to really learn this quickly and deeply is to think about what was proposed about the self. Can you in your own experience, can you locate yourself? Is there a location that yourself goes to or is that is not also represented on this compass? Again, invitation to really, 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 really spar with this concept. Another thing that I would recommend, is think about, cause and effects. As we examine this in, more and more and more, are we going to take a knee are we going to tap out to cause and effect, specifically these types of causes and effects? Are we going to tap out to that? I also think, one thing that kind of just my eyes were open to just now is that, you know what, actually this is interesting, because the categories themselves, once we start to acknowledge that this is kind of the only thing that's going on, simultaneously we start to acknowledge our commonality with other people, right? So like, you could take something like unreliable performance as a category, and you could fill in all sorts of different, like, all these different, infinite different ways in which people are unrealistic. but that still doesn't take away the category, right? And so then at a deeper level, at a meta level, at a more root level, I'm actually not different, actually, right? Even though maybe on the surface, the manifestation of of being unreliable is one thing versus another thing, but what it is as a classification is the same, right? Or again, with the nihilistic performance or anything that we're doing in our mind, right? So this can also be a first taste of helping us acknowledge our commonality, our our relation to others. Let me just check my notes for any final. I think that's it. We'll have I will review if any remarks or questions will be relevant for next time. Maybe I can start off with those, or maybe we can start with some of the team. We can start different types of commentaries or some type of supplement to this on the website. Again, every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, we will be here live. Men's group, if you're in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, men's group every Tuesday at 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And I would invite you to check out our daily Dharma series on Instagram. Thank you so much for being patient with me while I learn how to use this in a way that we're proud of and that's on brand, that represents the work that we are aspiring to do. Sending you our best. Happy Sunday. See you soon. Take care.